Hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday. I hope that everyone is having a fabulous start to their day and week. Officially happy midweek, which is kind of nice, right? Means the weekend's coming up. I hope that you all have been doing well. I would love to hear your thoughts on, what you've thought of the past lives that I've done, if there is more information that you're looking for, if there's certain topics or even recipes that you'd like me to do. If you would like me to do more food demos, please let me know. I just want to check in and see, where I'm at with you guys and what you would like to see more of that can be really beneficial for you. So with that, I am just going to quickly check my Facebook to make sure that I am working and live. Um, and if something isn't going right, someone please drop some sort of comment. I would just like to know. So today's topic is one that I've actually talked about in other videos. And this is more of a little bit of a chat, not necessarily a training, but kind of bringing you more information that some research has been done. And research studies have been going on with this. And unfortunately, we need a lot more being done as well. So today's topic is all about the role of your gut microbiota and potential like probiotics and how they could help reduce symptoms for people battling fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. And next week, I'll also go into a little bit of autoimmune conditions too. So it varies based on conditions, what's going on. So when it comes to your gut health, it is very, very individualized. I will say that. And that is one of the biggest takeaways. So this is just going to be very broad, a nice chat to kind of show how the gut microbiota does play a role for fibromyalgia and your symptoms, whether it is cognitively, through the immune system and inflammation, and also through obviously bowel and bacteria, and how your digestion's working. So that's a little bit of the overview. Again, this isn't going to be like anything long like I've done in the past. Last week was short, in my opinion, because I'm so used to talking so much. Um, and today is also going to be relatively short too. So if there is more information that you're looking for, please drop your questions down below as I would like to dive in further for you, help you out, give you the answers that you are looking for. Again, all these conditions are so, so, so individualized. And yes, there is a broad overarching lifestyle and dietary habits that you can have to really help stave off those symptoms or improve your symptoms. So it really does get a little, that's where working with a dietitian or a practitioner who knows about fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and autoimmune conditions, that's where it can really help to work with someone to become more individualized and help you figure out, are there certain foods that are bothering you, what is going on with your gut. And I will get to that at the end as to how our gut microbiome can be more tailored. Um, Sorry, I don't drink coffee, but I am in dire need of a little boost today. So, yes, if I go a little spacey, it's because I'm a little tired. Um, so let's get started. You know, like I mentioned, I have spoke about probiotics, gut health, all that stuff in the past. And there is increasing evidence suggesting that, the role of gut microbiota of people suffering from fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and how it differs from that of healthy individuals. So based on research that I have looked into, there are several studies showing lower values of people with Escherichia coli, bifidobacterium, which are different bacteria inside our gut microbiome. And there are we see lower values of that in people with fibromyalgia and significantly higher numbers of enterococci compared to healthy controls. So those without fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue. And these imbalances and differences between the healthy population potentially leads to various gastrointestinal disorders. So there's also different like phyla or bigger species of bacteria like bacteroids, um, which is a broader category of bacteria in the gut. It's been seen as positively correlated with total symptom score on fibromyalgia impact questionnaires. So when we see an increase in these bacteroids in our gut bacteria and on gut tests for those with fibromyalgia, we see more symptoms and more issues and a higher impact regarding, quality of life. And we see an increase with the 2016 ACR diagnostic criteria too. So there is an increase that we see in abundance of parabacteroids, Meridae, and we also see a non-significant increase in another bacteria called Akkermansia muciniphila. And these species actually function together, but they result in lower fecal gamma glutamylation activity. Um, Glutamylation, there we go, activity with an increase in gamma aminobutyric acid or GABA. And we also see an increase in glutamate. So it's more of this increased ratio of glutamate in the body. And so what glutamate does in the body is it functions as an excitatory neurotransmitter. So when you have higher levels of glutamate, things are firing more in the body. You're having more neurons firing. It's that, when you think of excitatory, you think of like what coffee is going to do to me, hopefully, like, just really excited. It's excess, right? And glutamate functions, you know, as an excitatory neurotransmitter, and it also plays a role in pain signaling. So when we have this excess firing of our neurotransmitters and neurons in the body, it can become excessive. And that's where we can see the higher pain levels being reported. And we can start to see altered brain levels of glutamate too, because there is that gut brain connection, and higher levels of glutamine. And this has been associated with increased pain sensitivity, especially for those with fibromyalgia. So as I've said in past videos, there is that gut brain connection too, because there are neurotransmitters that are, created in our gut. The neurotransmitters in our brain, like they communicate. It's a bidirectional communication pathway. So when something is misaligned in the gut, out of balance, if issues are going on, it's going to signal to the brain, and there's going to be issues going on mentally and neurologically as well. And so we can start to see that, especially with the fatigue and the pain sensory and all of that. So there are several inflammatory and stress biomarkers that we see different in fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue patients compared to healthy individuals as well. So we see an increased release of pro-inflammatory cytokines. So these are immune compounds that they get expressed and secreted during an inflammatory state, and so there is a pro-inflammatory, meaning that there is one that is creating or kind of signals more inflammation in the body, called interleukin 8. And we see more of this level in fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue patients. And we also see greater levels of cortisol too, which if you've watched my adrenal videos, I've definitely talked about cortisol, the impact of the stress hormone on our body, as well as, noradrenaline and all those different components of the HPA axis. So we see that excess of cortisol or the heightened cortisol in fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue patients compared to those who are healthy individuals without fibromyalgia. So There has been some recent research that did look at probiotics and symbiotics. And symbiotics is a combination of a probiotic and a prebiotic. So a probiotic is can either be, in the form of food, where we will see that as like fermented foods, like think of kombucha, kefir, sauerkraut, um, yogurt, kimchi, you know, any of these fermented vegetables, or that we tend to have. Apple cider vinegar also has a little bit of bacteria in it too. It's the presence of bacteria in these fermented foods. um, and then you can get supplements that have these various bacteria in it as well. So that's probiotics. It's when you are bringing those bacteria into your gut, because we want to create a good gut atmosphere that's in balance. Um, and the prebiotics are what feed those gut bacteria. So it's the foods that feed those gut bacteria, which we can see a lot with like artichokes and asparagus and a lot of those higher fiber foods. Um, so the symbiotics is both prebiotic and probiotic. So there has been a study that looked at a symbiotic, which gave people both the prebiotic and probiotics. And they looked to see if there were any improvements in symptoms of fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. As we know from past research, that probiotic therapy can change our gut microbiota. When we're bringing in the gut bacteria that we need to be in our gut, maybe we haven't imbalance where we have an overgrowth of bad bacteria and we need to put in more of that good bacteria. It can enhance mucosal barrier function, so what lines the GI tract. We have, mucosa that lines our GI tract, and we want to keep it at a certain level. We don't want to have that mucosa start to get damaged and get eaten away at. We want to keep it a certain thickness so that our bacteria can survive, thrive, and be healthy. When we start to see less mucosa in our lining, we start to see more of that leaky gut happening too. So, probiotic therapy can also reduce the pro inflammatory cytokines, like that interleukin 8 that I was talking about, that we see commonly heightened in fibromyalgia patients. And they can have favorable effects on mood in people with emotional symptoms and, those elevated inflammatory immune signals. So, again, that connection between the gut and the brain. So we can also see some improvements in cognitive symptoms too when people are getting in the right bacteria and feeding it correctly. So this study wanted to see, okay, how, I mean, there have been several studies, but there's one that really looked at symbiotics. And it was done by Maria Dolores Hinchado et al. In a Nutrients magazine. And it showed that after ingesting a symbiotic, um, for a period of just 30 days, so for a month, um, fibromyalgia patients improved their mood, stress, and anxiety levels. There was an improvement on impact of the disease on their daily activities. So obviously that is subjective, and people were filling out validated questionnaires, but they did see improvement in their scores from the beginning of the 30 days to the end of the 30 days. And these findings were also consistent with other research in the past that had concluded that by increasing, microbial imbalance or increasing those probiotics into the gut, um, you improve the health of the host. So us as humans, those battling fibromyalgia. And we could see also some cognitive and psychological functions thanks to that gut brain axis too. So we all know that fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome are associated with severely dysregulated immune and inflammatory system. There's a dysregulation of that HPA axis. Again, go back and watch those videos. And so this dysregulation can induce an imbalance in those pro and anti-inflammatory cytokines, and they can have a pivotal role in the pathogenesis of fibromyalgia. So they don't necessarily cause fibromyalgia, but they can really worsen symptoms. And for some people, yeah, it can bring an onset of fibromyalgia, but usually there's another hitter that kind of triggers it. The imbalance between the pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory cytokines likely leads to chronic peripheral sensitization of the nervous system, and that can also be related to the pain dysregulation and pain sensitization, and the way pain is processed in the body. Um, and again, that interleukin 8 is seen as increase in fibromyalgia patients. And so when there was that intervention of given that symbiotic, the systemic levels of interleukin 8 decreased, and we were able to see actually an increase in anti-inflammatory cytokines, and a specific one called interleukin 10. So we actually saw the body create more anti-inflammatory cytokines to help reduce inflammation in the body, which was fantastic. And many authors are concluding that it was thanks to the symbiotic, the change in the gut bacteria from these probiotics that helped rebuild that mucosal barrier and bring in those good gut bacteria, healing that leaky gut, and then be able to lower those symptoms for people with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. And there was likely a better immunoneuroendocrine regulation, so connection between your immune system, neuro, um, oh my gosh, neurological system, and your endocrine system. So I'm sorry, I am clearly needing more sleep or something in my life. So as you can see, fellow fibro person over here, and my brain's affected, and I do need to actually start implementing my probiotics again. So, gastrointestinal symptoms, those also appear for a lot of people with fibromyalgia. Nearly 81% of people with fibromyalgia reported fluctuating between normal and irregular bowel patterns. And there is a smaller portion of us that report fluctuating specifically between diarrhea and constipation. Um, and 32 to 80%, which is a very wide and broad range, of patients with fibromyalgia meet criteria for also like IBS too. And it was at least like 80% of patients we tend to see with SIBO problems too. So we know there's an issue with our gut bacteria going on, hands down. So what does that mean? If you are not implementing a probiotic, I would recommend maybe implementing a broad probiotic. But first, I would also talk to your doctor, whoever you're working with. If you are not working with someone, feel free to reach out to me and we can set up a free 30-minute discovery call, and we can go over what you're experiencing symptom wise currently, and come up with a plan for you and see, okay, do we need to maybe further test for your gut, and your microbiome. So that's another thing, is that everything is so tailored, where depending on the inflammatory status and markers of your gut and what is maybe high regarding different bacteria or overgrowth, there are certain probiotics that you want to steer clear from, and certain bacterial strains that you want to steer clear from, because it can actually hinder and create more problems, especially for people who have SIBO. So that's why getting an individual tailored plan for you can really be more beneficial, as you're working with someone, instead of just trying to do it yourself, because some things can backfire. So unfortunately, we do need more studies to look at prebiotics, probiotics, and then symbiotics too, in managing fibromyalgia, in managing chronic fatigue, in managing various autoimmune conditions as well. Um, and I wish we could have it really quick. I'm hoping that there are going to be more studies out there to look at this, because current studies are showing that there is improvement. And it would be nice to have more of specific protocols regarding, probiotics for fibromyalgia patients. But overall, rebalancing your gut microbiome is very key in reducing fibromyalgia symptoms. So this includes removing foods that provoke inflammation for you, providing your body with the appropriate probiotics, symbiotics, prebiotics, what have you, and feeding your body, again, those prebiotics so that your probiotics or your gut bacteria in your body can actually thrive, flourish, and have that balanced microbiome. It's really hard to stay balanced in today's way of living. Like all of our microbiomes are kind of taking hits. So we all need a little help in this area. And there is one way of looking at your gut microbiome to really tailor, really get individualized, see where you need the most help and what could really be going on in your gut bacteria, your gut microbiome. And we can do that through something called a GI map test. So this is a stool test. So yes, you do send in a stool sample, and it goes to a lab, and they look at the various pathogens. They look, that you potentially could be harboring or have had in the past. They look at H. pylori, virulence factors. They look at parasites and whether you have any active parasites going on in your body. So maybe we need to do a parasite protocol. Fungi they look at. Then there is inflammatory markers in your gut that can be shown as being heightened, or maybe you're having issues with your inflammatory or immune system or inflammation not working correctly in your body. So we're able to look at these different markers in the body as to how inflamed is your gut. Is your gut struggling with proper immune responses and that kind of stuff? And then it looks at the various balance of your different bacteria. So, whether it's the good bacteria, the bad bacteria, and then it looks at broader species of bacteria too to see how in ratio they are. So it's really cool to get this picture to see, this makes sense. And here's where I might need to have some help when it comes to my gut health. So it can pinpoint better, it also looks at like how your pancreas is doing with digestive enzymes too. So are you making enough enzymes? Is your pancreas suffering from, um, you know, any current conditions or things going on for you? So you're not making the enzymes that you need to break down your food. Forgot to mention that. So that's also a cool thing that this GI map test can show too. It shows how well your digestion's going and how well your gut microbiome is when it comes to an environment. So again, this can help really pinpoint what you need individually, and what foods we can bring more into the diet, or what foods we might need to steer clear of that could be hurting you. Are you really having too many carbohydrates that are feeding the bad bacteria in your gut? We're able to see things like that. So it helps really tailoring to the person and feed into that big picture and root cause for your symptoms and what's going on. So the health status of your gut microbiome is key in managing fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, and also autoimmune conditions. And this is an area that I majorly focus on with my clients and would love to be able to help you out with as well. With that being said, that is just a nice little chat and update on, we're needing more research when it comes to the probiotics, but there is a lot of good stuff out there showing that probiotics can help alleviate fibromyalgia symptoms, the pain, the cognitive function, and those inflammatory markers too. So again, if you are void of any probiotics in your diet right now, or you haven't taken a probiotic ever, you might want to consider something. Make sure you talk to someone before you do start. But it would be really beneficial to, start to get that balance back into your gut microbiome. So I hope that you found this helpful. Again, please let me know if you have any questions at all. And have a great rest of your Wednesday. Take care, and until next time.